Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Gunjan and a very warm welcome to all of you to the panel discussion Embracing the New Normal of Education, Decoding Future Imperatives. Through this session, we aim to discuss and deliberate over various moving parts and challenges of educational institutions to survive and thrive in the current times of change. The event is expected to be attended by over 300 top IT leaders from the educational sector across the country. Please join me in welcoming our session chair and moderator for the evening, Ms. Charu Malhotra, who's the co-founder and managing director of Primus Partners. Ms. Malhotra is an educationist and a development professional with over 20 years of experience in public education and social infrastructure building in 15 states in India. Welcome, Ms. Malhotra. Our next panelist today would be Ms. Rajata Kulkarni, who is the president of Sri Sri University. Ms. Kulkarni took over as the president of the prestigious Sri Sri University in India in April 2017. Before that, she served as a member of the Board of Governors of Sri Sri University from 2009. Welcome, Ms. Kulkarni. Our next panelist today is Dr. K.P. Isaac, who's the Vice Chancellor of Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science. Dr. K.P. Isaac assumed charge as the Vice Chancellor of Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science on 1st March 2018. Prior to joining HITS, he was the founder Vice Chancellor of APJ Abdul Kalam Technological University. Dr. Isaac has profound experience in the academic field, spanning over 38 years. Welcome, Dr. Isaac. Our next panelist today is Mr. Aditya Burlia, who is the co-promoter APJ Satya and Swaran Group. Mr. Burlia is a young entrepreneur who balances his role in the corporate world with his philanthropic dedication to education. He has to his credit several innovative industrial and educational initiatives, including key operational roles in the strategic projects of APJ Satya Group. Welcome, Mr. Burlia. Our next panelist today is Mr. Aman Mittal, who is Additional Director, Lovely Professional University, Punjab. Mr. Aman Mittal is a young dynamic force of Lovely Professional University management team. He is leading different teams passionately and is instrumental in driving university's internalization, strategy, university's overall growth, marketing, and harnessing information technology for the university's governance. We welcome you, Mr. Mittal. Our next panelist would be Mr. Mohan Kumar CM, who is the Assistant Director Systems, Vellore Institute of Technology and VIT University. Mr. Mohan Kumar is currently working with the VIT University as Assistant Director Systems, and he is responsible for the IT infrastructure management of Vellore campus. Prior to joining VIT, he has worked with Tata Coffee Limited, TVS and Sons, and FutureNet Technology. We welcome you, Mr. Mohan Kumar. And last but not the least, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ragesh Kanot, who's the Head Sales South VMware India. Mr. Ragesh Kanot has more than 18 years of experience in IT sales covering enterprise software and hardware and general management. Mr. Kanot has been with VMware for over 9 years and is currently the Head of Sales for Commercials Business across South India. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome the panel. And now I would also like to hand over the session to our moderator this evening, Ms. Charu Malhotra. So Ms. Charu Malhotra, over to you for the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gunjan. And we are all very grateful to VMware and to the Guild for getting us together for this discussion. Our discussion today is inspired by an unprecedented scenario. In the wake of COVID, universities and colleges have had to suspend the physical campus and rely on the digital. And we can give this scenario many names. We can call it a challenge, a crisis, or an opportunity. But one thing is clear. In the coming months, our notions of digital maturity are going to be tested on many fronts. Buzzwords like connected campuses, student-centric learning, user experience, digital transformation, online blended learning, proctored examinations, and many, many more will be put to the test. So we look forward to hearing from how our panel view this situation. All our 6 panelists are marking milestones of change in the educational landscape, especially in the digital space. So the question that together we will address today is that given this disruption, what is our preparedness to don a digital identity, both in form and substance? And what are the lessons for the future? So I go on to bring in our panel, our first panelist, Mrs. Rajita Kulkarni. Given the compulsion of remote classrooms at this time, do share with us what has been the experience at Shri Shri University. Has technology really been consistent and seamless with the end user experience? And very importantly, while we look at digital solutions and tools and the whole transformation story, what has been the role of the faculty in the self-learning of the students?
Thank you, Ms. Malhotra, and really happy to be on this panel with so many wonderful colleagues from the field of education as well as education technology. I look forward to a great hour of learning from each of them. We had already started preparing a plan for if at all we had to shut the campus, what we would do, because we are close to 2,000 students living on campus from all over India, also from many countries of the world. So what would be our plan to send students back home? How would we go virtual? Security, security imperatives, so many of that. So when we got that on Friday, I think we were mentally prepared. It wasn't a shock for us. We were not taken aback. And we were almost, I think, 60 to 70% ready with a plan of action of what we would need to do. And what ultimately happened was that within 4 days, we were able to send almost 98% of our students back home. The 2% of the students who stayed back on campus couldn't go because of lack of availability of transport, and it became just too, I think, dangerous to let them then travel far. And we became 100% virtual. So all our classes went online. Some of our faculty of agriculture, for example, was already in exam mode. So we had to quickly see how we could start doing exams online. So for some of our faculties, we had to actually move into exam mode. For some others, we had to move into completion of curriculum mode. For some others, we were, in midway. So the Vivas had started, curriculum had finished. So we were in 3-4 different stages of completions for the different faculties that we have. And I would like to say, you raised the question about the role of the faculty. I have been saying this on every webinar in the last 3 months that, as much as we are celebrating the first responders and the healthcare workers, I think a huge salute is due from our whole country to our school and college and university teachers and faculty members. I'm also on the board of our Shri Shri Ravi Shankar Vidya Mandir Trust. We run 100 schools in India. We have about 40,000 students. And, all of even our classes there were caught in the last minute. And even there, even to primary and higher secondary students, our teachers literally went in a war-like mode online and were able to support our students. So firstly, I think one thing we need to thank COVID was that if it had not happened, it was like a catharsis. It was like it catalyzed the whole process of moving online. I can say for us, for sure, we were not thinking of doing this for the coming foreseeable at least a year or two, and we were kind of, we were propelled into it. So I think that is something for us to thank this pandemic for. Secondly, I would like to say that our faculty really embraced it. Faculty also tends to be in various age groups, from the assistant professors who are younger and, more up to it with technology, to some of our senior professors and deans who may not have needed to use it so much and therefore may not have been so comfortable. But I think universally, everybody embraced it. Everybody had a really positive can-do attitude. And more than that, I really appreciate the students. It has been a traumatic time for them, to just like in such an urgency to leave campus, go home, and then to be surrounded by so much bad news. But they, took to it. All our faculty members shared, and I have heard this from many other universities, that attendance has been better, attention has been better, assignments have been completed, I think, even better and more, timely. So students have also embraced it. Faculty members also embraced it. We, in fact, had our entire examination also online. Almost 13 to 14,000 papers were written, the results have been declared, and we had about 2% of our students who could not take the exams because of connectivity issues or network issues, and we are looking at how we can do it for them. We still have time before we open campus, so we are thinking of how we can do it for them. Overall, I would say this has been an experience, a very positive experience for us. I think we took it very positively. We did a lot of new things. In fact, our faculty came ahead and we had this any number of free webinars that they did on Facebook Live, on our YouTube channel, just to share talents, just to share skills, to talk, and that has got us a lot of goodwill. About close to 250,000 people have viewed these webinars by our faculty, and this summer, actually, something which has been very close to my heart and has happened is that all our faculty has now started doing online MDP programs, and with so much demand for it, from all over the world, people are participating in it. So it has been a great experience for us. And I think one more thing also which we did very consciously was being in touch with the students aside of the classroom, because now is the time. I always feel you can study anytime, but the state of mind has to be taken care of. The mental health has to be addressed, because everybody has been in this uncertain, sort of fearful mode. So we did a lot of counseling sessions. Anyways, we have an ecosystem of students who meditate. We teach meditation in our campus. Our students meditate every day, do breathing techniques, yoga every day. It's part of the way of life on campus. And we even facilitated this online for them. So I think students, of course, you were talking about the survey before, that students miss campus for sure. We also miss the students. Campus is campus because of the students, not because of the building.
True. Yes, Mrs. Kulkarni.
We
Yes.
miss each other, definitely. But I think we use this time in the most positive and in the most productive way. And I think all of us will agree. In fact, all of us have become, I think, probably fans of these online meetings. They are a lot more time efficient, and so things have been very positive and very, very productive for us. I will pause here and then come back to the second round.
Yes, we'll come back to you, because we did hear a lot. We heard about online exams. We heard about actually how everybody, picked up on the go, and they kind of resumed. And I'm sure there would have been challenges, like you said, the 2% who did not have connectivity. And teachers suddenly overnight turned into directors and technology. They had to manage a classroom, they had to manage the technology issues. So I think hats off to, the whole fraternity, the whole ecosystem who managed, and like you said, from classrooms to Zoom, Teams, Meet online sessions, and webinars and VCs. And I still forget to unmute myself when I speak. But it has really changed how we have collaborated and connected. Thank you. We'll come back to you on a lot of the points you said. Let's come to Dr. Isaac. Dr. Isaac, we heard from Mrs. Kulkarni, their experience at the university, and how, completion of the curriculum, syllabus, this took us by surprise. We were not prepared. How about at your end? How prepared were you? How did you, rise to the challenge? Let's hear from you, your experiences, sir.
Actually, this is something which was not anticipated. Nobody knew what is going to happen. By seeing the situation, I was almost sure that it's not going to end. And today also, I'm of the opinion that this will continue for some more time, and we are not sure when we are going to reopen the institutions. So this may be August, September, October. We are not sure when we are going to do it. So an alternative mechanism was absolutely essential to tackle the problems so that we continue our education uninterrupted. So that was the thing. Predominantly, we have been concentrating on engineering. So engineering on a distance mode is something which we have never heard. We wanted, it's a practice-oriented one, or an experiential learning which has to happen. It's basically more on the theory, and not on the theory, it's more on the practical. So it's quite difficult. So, but there was no other choice other than to reach out to the students who have moved out. Most of them have moved out, except maybe some students who have been staying because they could not go. So all of them have moved out to their respective homes or villages, wherever they have been, they are there. So the issue was that how do you perform? I mean, how do you reach out to the students? The one thing which I was equipped by that time is that over the last 2 years, we have been building up a good learning management system. The second one is a delivery platform. We have a good LMS. The second one is that we wanted a good platform to reach out to the students. So like that, this time, we are meeting on a platform. So we had a license to the Microsoft Teams by the time, and we had a similar training, and that was intended for something else, not for this particular purpose. So the MS Teams was a handy tool for me to start the delivery. So I could start by April 1st week on a trial basis to reach out to the students. My idea was not to one faculty to many students. I wanted the system of what we have been doing in the class of one teacher to 60 students. I wanted to replicate the same thing. So using the Microsoft Teams, what we started doing is that we started the classes by the respective teachers to the respective students of that class. So 1 to 60, 60 is the number which normally we have in a class. So that continued, and by April 15, we moved to a regular timetable to complete the 25% of the sessions with the internal assessments which had to be on the line, except the practicals.
So you're saying that except the practicals, the hands-on, the rest, everything else continued. Yeah. At some point when we come back to you, sir, we'd like to understand any plans for the future if the situation continues. What has the Institute thought of in terms of the resuming the practicals?
The practicals, we are moving into the cloud platform for computer science or computer related courses. But for other courses, I'm not very comfortable with the virtual labs which have been developed by the ministry over a long period of time. They have started that, but I'm not very happy with that kind of a scenario. What we thought is that we are going to start the next semester on June 22nd. Right?
Okay.
So we complete the major theory portions and hope that the situation may ease out by before the close of the next semester, so that we could handle the practicals of the previous semester as well as the current semester which is going to be there. So that I just wanted to add one more thing which I wanted to tell you is that we could do a lot of industry lectures we could arrange during this period. The teachers also got more time. I mean, probably I wanted to tell you that the teachers saved at least 1 hour to 3 hours in commuting to the campus, which they could use it for effectively for the students. So it is something like we have to redefine the role of the teacher in this pandemic situation or in the digital age to teach students in the digital way so as to equip the students to work for the digital age. This is the role which we are. Right.
Thank you for sharing. We'll come back to you, sir. Let's move on to Mr. Mohan Kumar. You just heard what Dr. Isaac said, not very comfortable with the virtual, so the practicals are going to be pushed to another session, and that probably will be a very interesting session for the students. So do tell us, because when we speak of anytime, anywhere access, and you do have an on-demand virtual lab set up at VIT, do share that experience of how students have navigated and how has the university managed in terms of schedules, in terms of self-learning models. For example, we heard from Mrs. Kulkarni that there has been no issue with attendance, there has been no issue with attention spans. But we'd like to hear from VIT as to what has been your experience of virtual labs there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Malhotra. It is a good time that we are all meeting here together to share our experience and thoughts on moving towards a not completely, at least partially digital mode. But coming back to the digital mode of learning, like our preparation for this not to the basically for the digital learning has started quite some time back. Like we have been doing a lot of work in virtualizing most of our infrastructure with respect to servers and the desktops. So that's been going on for some time, and there was a lot of work and a lot of sessions have been conducted prior to COVID on digital mode, where we were students were given access to the digital labs where they can work on the tools wherever they are, right? And though it was not started the larger scale, but we started in a very small note, and when we started, we really started scaling up, right? So prior to getting into the virtual mode, people have been forced to come to the lab, and the today's generation, like they never wanted to come to or learn or during a prescribed time. They always want to have the freedom of learning at any point of time. Like when I will be learning, I will be more comfortable when I probably when I sit in the morning and study. Probably some students will be happy to do it in the evening or in the late in the night. So that is the kind of situation where we thought, okay, let us see whether we can provide those facilities to the students wherever they are. So we were, in fact, working with the VMware some time back. Almost, I think its association with VMware is almost now 8 years. And during that time, we have deployed on a trial basis, like the VDA solution of VMware, where we have tested almost 35 scientific or engineering application on this platform, made it working on this platform, so that students can use these resources wherever they are, like whether they are they are at home or at hostel or in the classroom. Even there are situations where students were able to access these tools inside the classroom. They not have to go to the lab to basically to test their learnings. Rather, they can do it then and there, like when the theory session is happening. For example, there is a session happening on MATLAB, and the students wants to access MATLAB from the desk where they are, so they were able to do it. So this is what we have been doing it. And
so you had, sorry, but so you had some flexible schedules, and
yeah,
this is also was continuing prior, and it has continued in the same mode now, is what you're saying.
Exactly. We follow something called fully flexible credit system, where the students have the opportunity to select the subject, the teacher, and the timings. So it may not be like we don't have a class-based or a batch-based system. Students will be coming and attending a session in a particular class. Probably after the class, the students will go out, and with another batch of students will come and occupy, or there will be mix and match. Like for example, a student from computer science will be attending a particular program in electronics department, or maybe in electrical department if they are offering the similar kind of program. So they have the flexibility of selecting the subject in different departments.
So, sir, you're saying that, so these are simulated environments, these are virtual labs. But what about the role of the faculty? I mean, when in such a situation, in such a scenario?
So basically, what we do is, it is like we have regular labs where the faculty will schedule the lab, where as an administrator we will schedule and give access to the students. And off class hours, the infrastructure will be available where the students can voluntarily come forward and log in and select the tools. Or if they need a specific tool to be streamed to them, they send the request to us. We provide those tools in the infrastructure and they use it. Yeah, maybe they may use either their laptop or a desktop or even from a mobile. Like we have never thought about doing a 3D application on a mobile, which is happening today, because we have virtualized the graphics application is running now on a virtual environment. We have a grid here which is completely on a virtualized environment. So, and you don't believe that even the thin clients are used for used in the lab basically to run 3D applications, like where you really need a workstation, but on a very thin client it is being run and done. So that is basically based on the virtualized graphic infrastructure.
Very nice. Thank you, sir. We'll be back to you. Mr. Burlia, let's hear from you. Do tell us how has this time, as well as and even before COVID, this whole digital transformation, how does it impact the college, the education culture, the ethos in terms of associations, technology, workforce? How do they all come together? And currently, in the virtual dimension, everything operating just now online or off campus, I should say. What is your experience? What has changed or what has not changed at APJ?
Thank you so much. And it's a fantastic delight to be with such amazing panelists on this conversation. Let me take a step back. So for us, and start with just some basic numbers. We are talking about 13 schools, 16 colleges and university, almost something like 35,000 to 38,000 students, 1,500 faculty members, right? And we have been a pioneer in terms of cloud computing and digitalization. For example, we were fully on VMware by 2004. I don't think most people had even heard of VMware in 2004. And we were 100% in the cloud by 2010. And in fact, AWS and a number of people have given us some nice awards and all for that. So, going into the lockdown, we thought we were very prepared. We had been using Zoom for almost 4 years before. Most of our faculty had been trained on our internal online LMS system. And when the lockdown happened, and in certain states where we operate, that happened maybe a week before the official national lockdown, we thought we were all set, right? Absolutely not. I think anybody who says otherwise is, I don't know what to say about them, right? So some things work really well. So stuff that we had, our LMS systems, our video conferencing systems, our scheduling backend, everything else, and we were actually able to be back running the full timetable in every school, every college, and the university within 5 days of the lockdown happening. We were able to conduct all our tests, unit tests, exams, everything, all of that. I would love to say seamlessly, but in the background, what was going on? First, I don't think anybody slept for those first 2-3 weeks. I think our entire tech teams were up till 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning, because every day there was like, okay, this was the user experience yesterday. We have to make this better. It has to be faster. It has to support very low speeds of internet connectivity. Many of our students had gone back to some of the more rural areas. Many of them come from underprivileged backgrounds where they don't have a very fast internet connection at home. And so when we look at this virtual stuff, there's a fundamental assumption that everybody has a reasonable internet connection, right? And for us, we wanted to encapsulate the same class experience as much to start with online before we really try to innovate beyond it. The second, I completely agree with Kulkarni madam on this. Our teachers were absolutely phenomenal heroes. They were very much computer literate, LMS literate, but they did not sign up for this. They did not sign up for being at home, putting their mobile phones on their makeup table or sitting outside on a chair and trying to get a Wi-Fi connection just so they could hold a class. And we had to conduct multiple training sessions on how do you translate classroom presence, right? A teacher knows how to walk into a classroom. A professor knows how to walk into a classroom. Command presence. Make sure that students are listening, they're disciplined, they're interacting. All that goes out the window when they have to convert that to a virtual environment. And I think that was one of the biggest stressors for our teachers, is to very quickly in that 1 week, 2 week, suddenly learn how to bring that classroom presence, that classroom operations. How do you get students to raise their hands? Who are the ones who are more comfortable with this technology and others? Working with their parents. We had huge number of groups with parents, because particularly younger children, they're not setting up their Zoom connections on their own, right? And so you have parents sitting in the background trying to get them to do this with headphones. And we were surprised at some of the amazing innovation that our teachers did on the fly. I mean, and we were able to try to get those best practices. So, for example, we moved physical education completely online. We had dance, drama, theater,
Brilliant.
audience, the entire thing to see how we can manage vocally. Now, what worked well? I think for us, recreating the classroom experience as a standard worked very well. I think we were really pushing for a lot of blended learning before the lockdown happened. This was a phenomenal opportunity for many of our faculty members to actually address that and start that. I say blended learning more in terms of self-study and then back and then review and rewind. We were surprised, like I said, of how many things we could move online. We've had yoga classes and, like I said, coordinated dance dramas. We even had plays where everybody has come out and done their lines, and we run an entire virtual play to show. We've done student teams, project work that have happened, college clubs, university clubs, and really help them recreate by empowering them, by giving them the tools and saying, look, here's a Zoom ID with a fully functional system there. We've paid for it, go for it. Here's our LMS system. Here is a part where you can do, and really help with the curation. I think scale was a problem for us. And at peak, when we were trying to run all of our exams, we had something like 35, 40,000 students trying to give exams in the same 3-4 periods of time. It took us a couple of days to sort that. A lot of sleepless nights, very dependent on scale-up infrastructure at the back end. We were very lucky. We were all in on the cloud for this, and we were able to spin up 20, 30 servers on demand to really push up what we really needed to do. What for me has been a key lesson here, which I really hope all of us take, I think it put to lie a lot of things that we were all telling ourselves on how education should work. I think it put to lie a lot of things that regulators were saying, you absolutely need this for education to work. And so in 1-2 months' time, we suddenly had to educate and train everybody saying, no, this is easy. You can use your phone, you can use your laptop. And after the first
How very true, Mr. Burlia. Absolutely. In fact, I just like to add some more challenges. For example, and I'm sure this would be a wide experience. We're talking about students at home, and there are shared devices, shared spaces.
Absolutely.
There are home sounds. I mean, there are disruptions at home, distractions at home. So one is that. Let me come to Mr. Aman Mittal. You've heard everybody speak on their, the various experiences. One thing is that what is the main objective of learning institutions is viable learning. Is our learning viable? And is digital transformation actually helping in viable learning? So that is one aspect, because if we talk of virtualization, if we talk about mobile technologies and education on the go, which is all very good, but what is the impact on learning? And I thank Mrs. Kulkarni, Mr. Burlia, and even Dr. Isaac for bringing in these human elements. So where do you see that going? That is one. And the other is what if you could also focus on is that skills, the IT skills that our students need to come out prepared from the classrooms, which need to prepare them for industry, for technology advancements. But what Mr. Burlia just brought out, that even IT skills to navigate the virtual medium for both faculty and students is something that probably we could look at. What about your thoughts on that?
I think I cannot disagree with any of the panelists. I mean, everybody has come forward with their own challenges and issues. I can say that LPU is one of the largest university in the country with some 30,000 plus students studying in a single campus. I know Mr. Burlia has mentioned there are so many students in different campuses. So we had a very different challenge that all the students, one campus, 30,000 plus of them, some 200 plus programs, not just focusing on engineering, but from hotel management to animation to a lot of other stuff. So I think the challenge was great. But one thing which is great about LPU is that we have always invested in infrastructure, be it physical or technology. I mean, Ragesh knows that we have been working with VMware for a very, very long time. Our whole data centers is up with VMware softwares, and the technology adoption is really, really high. Everybody has LMS, but I think our LMS, we've set up, 2007-8, when everybody has a thinking of LMS, we already had LMS. So trust me, probably Mr. Burlia would not agree with me, but I think we were really prepared. I think there was preparedness at the LPU level, at LPU at a very, very high level, because we have been always a very technologically advanced university. Our faculty has always been very trained on various ICT usage. I mean, so forth to an extent that LPU has its own WhatsApp, which has been like a WhatsApp. We have our own live messaging app, which we call it LPU Live, which is very much similar to WhatsApp, where groups can be created and you can do the messaging, you can share the videos and PPTs, and it is connected to our LMS. So as soon as a section is created and a group is already created with their faculty members and their section people involved, and you can share their presentations and stuff like that. So, I mean, we were really prepared, but rightly said, first 1 week was tough for everyone. I mean, rightly said, nobody slept. I mean, personally, I take care of a lot of growth in IT booth. I think we were not able to sleep for a few hours in a day because there was so much going on. Then the whole idea is to ensure everything goes up. Though everything was there, but I think there's a lot of work which has to go on operational level to ensure that the kids are getting their education. We have a lot of partners in US, in UK, and Australia, and Canada, even in China. So we knew that in somewhere that it's going to go longer. So let's kind of roll it off as soon as possible. It's not going to be a lockdown for a month or a few weeks. It's going to go forward. So I think we were quite prepared. And one thing which we have, as Mr. Baria has also said, that technology has a very huge role to play. Everybody understood it before as well, I think, but now everybody has kind of accepted it that you cannot live without technology. The whole acceleration of accepting of technology has gone up at a very high speed. Previously, people were thinking about, I mean, as you said, novel idea of a Zoom, but now it's like Zoom, everybody knows it. I mean, it's okay to provide lessons on Zoom and provide lectures on Zooms and do interaction and meeting like a webinar like this. You don't really need to come together to do a webinar and share the thoughts. I mean, you can really do it online as well, and it's as effective as it is in a physical mode. But yes, there are, as Rachita ma'am has mentioned, that there are challenges that you cannot provide the practical knowledge on the go with this thing. But I think at LPU, we have always been very kind of looked at BYOD, bring your own devices, in a very, we have been able to push this in a large extent in the university. So our students were anyways were able to do their practicals online. But yes, for the physical education and for other things, our faculty has played a huge role. They recorded, even physiotherapy department, you won't believe, they have recorded all the lectures themselves by doing all this exercise themselves and putting in the groups and sharing with them. So faculty has played a huge role into that. As the seminar is about what's the future, I think the future is going to be a lot of blended learning. A lot of people have started talking about that. I mean, if the online education is so good, do you think there's a need of offline education? Online education is good, but it has its limitation. It's a lot of blended learning that happen in future, and I think we should, as all the leadership teams are here from various institutions, I think we all realize it, that it's a blending learning which is going to be the way forward, and we should start investing hugely on it.
So in fact, as very recently in a webinar, one of our panelists said brick and portal instead of brick and mortar, or just, so I thought that was so you will be getting into brick and portal. So let's come to Mr. Ragesh Kanot. I mean, VMware and providers and enablers like you are the very backbone, for all our, the edtech space, for our learning institutions, and to provide this seamless digital transformation. I would like to know your experience, of course, because we've been so this is a tipping point. This is a tipping point where everybody in the edtech industry was pushing for this digital adoption, and it's there, as we see, it's there more in the higher education space than in the school education space. But still, even for you working in the higher education space, what is your experience? What has been your experience prior the COVID crisis happening and now? And where do you see yourself, being engaged in the future?
Thank you, Ms. Malhotra. So thank you for the introduction. I'm pretty happy to be part of this panel with all the education leaders with rich experience and hearing out their transformational journey. Let me just start with a brief overview about the company. VMware. Many customers associate us with our original success in virtualization and aren't really aware of how we have grown and how we have evolved. Founded in 1998, we are around 10.8 billion company with an install base of 100,000 customers, including all the 99% of Fortune 1000 companies, irrespective of the industries, what they are, with around employee strength of 31,000, operating in 50 odd countries. The best part of go-to-market is we have a very extensive ecosystem of technology, business, and distribution partners, which includes one company, Dell Technologies, one of the world's largest IT solution provider. The messaging what we take typically is we are leading innovators in enterprise software, and the services span goes into the data center side, onto the cloud, to the edge, and to the devices in a secured fashion. So if I could summate this, for the last 7+ years, our vision has been very, very consistent. And we've been updating our vision based on our latest acquisitions, and the vision of any application on any cloud to any device with a secured access gives the base foundation for a digital transformation. I absolutely resonate with almost all the leaders here have spoken in terms of accessing and providing access to the students from anywhere and into any device. It's also important that how do you frame that in a secured fashion. For example, one of the quote was being given by Mr. Mohan VIT. They've been using this much before. A couple of years back, they've started deploying these features to enable students to more be proactive or to engage closer with the faculties. They've seen this change of a digital campus. So I think it's absolutely resonate well with whatever everybody has spoken. There's a role for us as an organization to play, not just from a data center side on virtualizing, but it's also in terms of how do you enable students to give a multi-cloud, right, on demand, and then how do you give these in a secured fashion to any devices. It could be a laptop, it could be a desktop, it could be even a mobile device, what they have. So that's something which we have right now, and we are engaged with customers and institutions who are very proactively coming and saying what are the next steps to be done. The institutions who are already virtualized the data center are looking and coming and inquiring and working with us to see how they can get to the next phase of giving these employee or the students experience much better and efficient, because you got to retain the talent, you got to retain the faculties. So these are something which would come in. So when the COVID situation started, it was more of an reacted approach of getting things done, but now it's getting into a reflect manner to see how it can be done in a secure fashion.
So was there engagement? Were you getting calls? Were you getting consultations as to how to improvise?
Absolutely. On the BCP's front, we have enough and more opportunities or engagements with customers in the education segment to check what are the next three things which we got to do. Right? It's a journey. When somebody started a couple of years back, it was just a virtualization, and the next step is to how do I give these benefits and services to the students and make their experience much effective.
So Mr. Rakesh Kanot, I mean, even if you look at our panel today, everybody had different experiences. Everybody came from a different level of preparedness, or like some said, we thought we were prepared, but we were not really prepared. And everything evolved organically. So, were your experiences also getting calls, like a kind of mixed reactions and responses?
Right. For example, I'm just quoting Mr. Aditya was mentioning the scale up demand. Right. Now, what happened? They already have a data center which is virtualized, but the demand is increasing in terms of number of students accessing. So our multi-cloud, our hybrid cloud is based on vCloud Foundation, VMware Cloud Foundation, which delivers the virtualized and the software-defined data center, which we call it as SDDC technology across almost all the hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Google, IBM, or Oracles, and so forth. So you can actually move data center workloads to the cloud and move native workloads to the data center and run this new container-based application irrespective of the environment. It could be your on-prem data center or it could be your cloud.
Right.
And interestingly, this is all done with the intrinsic security and access to any device.
And I think, yes, our systems should be making this shift to, to this whole different way of it's a different kind of a server setting up. Absolutely. So I think very soon we should be seeing that shift. So thank you everybody for sharing your thoughts with us. And it's very interesting, the kind of experiences that have come, the priorities everybody's been working on, and depending on where the preparedness, and what is the requirement of even the stakeholders that you're addressing. For example, a lot of them, like a lot of you have said, have moved back to their homes. Some of them, Mrs. Kulkarni, you said 2% do not have access, and then you will see how the examinations can be taken on. Mr. Berlier, you said, you'll have to again assess as to going forward, what is the the delta in terms of making that shift. Dr. Isaac, we look forward to your college resuming the practical applications. So just if we would go around and we, Mrs. Kulkarni, we come back to you. Just a little, what is your takeaway from this discussion? What is your wish and hope for the future, as well as what next? What is the next leap that your institution needs to make in terms of saying that, yes, we are ready, we are digitally prepared, for moving our classrooms into our homes or to a remote location if required? Can we start with you?
I think from that panic, we have to move to a sense of purpose, where we are proactively ready. I don't think education in India, at least, will ever become 100% virtual, at least in the near future. But whatever is that level of blending, how are we going to be able to prepare ourselves for that? So I think we have to move from panic to purpose. The second thing I think is we have to have an eye on the microscope as well as the telescope. So, we have to keep an eye on what is happening in our classrooms, on each of the students, in each of the class, on each of our faculty members. I've had young faculty members with, babies who are 6 and 7 months old. And, once you are at home, the baby doesn't want to leave the mom. So they have conducted classrooms with babies in their laps. And, and I think the fact that we entered our students' class, homes, whether they were their bedrooms or verandas or drawing rooms, and the students entered the homes of their teachers. I think it has brought the whole teachers and students very close. At least that is my experience. It has brought us also very close as a team, because in every Zoom call, you can see a beautiful painting behind somebody. I can see behind Mr. Mittal, so many trophies are there. We are able to experience each other more as people. So I think that should continue. So this microscopic sort of closeness that has, that it has brought to us should continue. And also the attention to classrooms, what Dr. Isaac said is absolutely true. How do you do practicals online? I appreciate Mr. Mittal when he said some of our faculty members are recording video sessions with family members, showing physiotherapy techniques. We also have an osteopathy school. Our faculty member made his father lie down on the bed and said, let me, demonstrate on you. So these microscopic needs of education will need to be given attention. At the same time, I think as leaders of education, we need to have the telescopic view also. What lies ahead? What 2 years hence? Now there is talk of, some such virus pandemic might come every few years. We cannot be caught unawares every time. So I think microscope and telescope both. That's my second point. The third point, I think, is this is also some sort of a wake-up call, I think, for education regulators. Because we have come, we have evolved as an education system after our independence to be where we are. Some of us in the private sector have been able to be more flexible, play with the resources we have, or our own ideas of how we want to build our institutions. But education regulators, I think, are now posed with a unique challenge, but I would say unique opportunity to redefine how we look at education. The erstwhile inspectors who used to come to your classroom with an inch tape and say, madam, ye 1 inch se kam hai. Based on the rule book, it should be 12 inches, yours is 11 inches. So, I don't know if those kind of it is an opportunity, I think, for us to redefine.
And I think what you said, panic to purpose and microscopic and telescopic, I think that's very, very, very succinctly kind of sums it up. Thank you, Mrs. Kulkarni. Dr. Isaac, what is your wish and your hope for the future and a projection possibly if we can get from you?
That's a very good question, actually. Actually, what Ms. Kulkarni has pointed out a few things which I appreciate that. The thing here is that education is one area where we have not changed much. We have started with MOOC, NPTEL, SWAYAM, all this have not taken from the road. It has not gone beyond a certain level. But today, with this pandemic situation, I think the education system is going in for a major change or a shift. This is going to happen from classroom, maybe not fully on to online. As she said, it is a blended form of education will happen, and that may prevail over the period of time. See, one thing is that our gross enrollment ratio for the nation is only 25, which has to move up so that the major mass will get educated, that will become the country more prosperous. So that blended form of education, which there are certain things which you have to understand here is that in a college environment and an institute environment, there is something which is happening other than the knowledge acquisition or the skills.
That's right, sir. Absolutely. Yes.
This is something which we have got to continue to do it. Maybe some form of learning will happen like this, but that peer interaction, human interaction, the team build out, all this will happen through a project, will happen through a practical with a teamwork. All this are essential for our industry to flourish. So we have got to have that. Maybe 30% campus life is an essential one to make every student for his organic growth. That cannot be.
And we need that. We need that balance, sir. Yes, Dr. Isaac. I think that's a very important message. Mr. Mohan Kumar, what is your wish and what is your projection going forward?
See, as I said in my earlier round, the online mode of education is going to be part of the life in future. But we cannot fully rely on the online mode. We should have a kind of blended model. And now we are in a very critical situation where students cannot come to the campus and they have to learn from their residence and or wherever they are. But the biggest challenge, like in every individual facing, is the availability of infrastructure at their locations. So in the sense at home, probably the connectivity is the biggest issue, though we have facilities to, for online programs, but the situation especially in rural part of India, the connectivity is the biggest challenge. So I think our government has to take a lot of initiative on providing stable connectivity, because if connectivity,
and we'll have to navigate our entire systems within our challenges. Yes. Mr. Berlia. Mr. Berlia, you said you were ready and yet not ready. What is the next thing you're going to do in order to set what was not ready?
Ajay, so I think we were completely ready from a technology perspective. I think we were completely ready from having our teachers and all trained. What we were not ready, which again, to Aman's point, fully appreciate, we're all ready in terms of something, but for all of them to suddenly move in 24/7 hours, I think no one was prepared for everyone to suddenly start doing their classes.
I think also psychologically we were, yes.
Absolutely. For me, it's less about the technology these days and more about the human element. We are phenomenally opportunistic, and for me, the biggest silver lining of this entire COVID-19 situation, for 2 decades, we have been pushing technology into education. We were the first people to put a computer in every classroom. I think the year 2000, we taught coding mandatory since 1995, 1996. It's taken us decades and decades to push people to change their mindset internally and externally. And what's happened in the last 3 months, everybody, and you can to some extent get your faculty up and running, right? But your students, their parents, regulators, the community, to really make that mind shift change, that it's possible because you're doing it every day.
And we really saw the connectedness happen at this time, and the humanist element that you say.
The self-confidence that so many faculty members still got, that I can do this. I am now someone who can be a leader in this space. The second thing for me, this is very exciting because note, the government was supposed to announce its comprehensive education policy and reform, which has been due now for 2 to 3 years. We've seen drafts, they've gone back and forth. And what's phenomenally exciting is that they have now COVID-19 to refer to as well.
Absolutely, as a frame of reference. So it needs to go back to the drawing board. Yes, it needs to. So, he mentioned that the education policy, the new education policy, and now we have a new frame of reference. And I wish they do go back to the drawing board. What is your wish? What do you want to see in that education policy?
See, I think education policy, I don't know. There are two aspects of it. Probably they're going to go to the drawing board again and take another 3 years to come back with a new policy. I just don't wish that, for sure. Yeah. I don't want that this could become a new bottleneck to come out with a new policy. But I think the new policy has to be more integrated with the whole India to be taken care of. Understanding that, okay, digital technology is very, very important. And Mr. Rajniti mentioned that, okay, is the technology is just not 1 centimeter or 1 feet or number of faculty, but matters in the quality that matters. And their parameters of judging quality would differ from what they have already made a rule book as. I think that would be our ask as an education institution, that we definitely want somebody to provide us the guidelines, but please be as advisor and guidelines than to be just providing a rule book which does not have real quality parameters kept in mind. So that's my wish list. And I think the one more important thing is that going forward, everybody would start talking about future. I think people were just thinking about present is great and stuff like that, but they were not talking about change to reach to that future. Now people would say that we need to change to achieve that future because it's uncertain. So let's change. I think that's something which all we would start appreciating more.
Right. We need to be more open to change. Mr. Ragesh Kanot, back to you. Do tell us, where do you see the change happening?
I'm seeing very clearly in terms of digital workspace transformation, and that we just spoke about it. But the question is, how are students going to be productive, and they need to work in a continuous and a highly secure access, which could access to their application with a wide range of devices what they have. So my take is with VMware Workspace ONE, which can enable high productive remote working on any of the devices with the students choose, and it could unify and automate and manage all these devices for the end users, irrespective of whether it's laptop, desktop, or a mobile or a virtual desktop, in a single solution. And it integrates across control application and multi-platform endpoint management by using VMware Workspace ONE. I think that is one area which would go irrespective of the regulations would come in. How do you do all this in a secure fashion? Because data is going to be important.
Right, the hygiene factors, etc., are very, very important. Yes. So I think it has been a very great, a very interesting session, hearing from all of you, and we have VMware and the Guild to thank for this. But really, very interesting perspectives coming out, the humanist element coming out from the leading universities and institutions and technology enablers. Thank you once again, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.